Good morning, Iowa. For Scott Casper, I'm Nick Learhoff. St. Gregory Talk Therapy discusses the topic that Iowans face every day, mental illness. Our program offers the expertise of doctors, therapists, and specialists who understand the challenges Iowans are facing. Join us from 4 to 5 a.m. and 10 to 11 a.m. Saturday mornings on Iowa's Hope, 940, and online at talktherapytmhs.com. Join in for the conversation in this important life topic. As we like to say, Iowa, we're listening.
You bet we are. Hello again, everybody. It is live from the Five Talents Financial Management Studios. Scott Casper, Nick Learhoff, Danny Bishop as well. Welcome to the show, St. Gregory's Talk Therapy. It is just that, the mental health show. We talk about various topics each and every week. This week, our topic du jour?
Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
Right. What is it? I'm going to ask you. I mean, you're closer to it than most. So tell me, what is post-traumatic stress disorder?
Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition by a terrifying event. Either experiencing it or witnessing it. It could be a personal experience, or that's something that they've seen, a person has seen. Symptoms include flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, as well as uncontrollable thoughts about the event and or themselves.
Now, is there a portion of the of mankind that is immune from it?
No. I mean, it can happen to anybody with any kind of life event. It could be a car crash. It could be an uncontrolled violent event from somebody else. You think of some of the mall shootings and school shootings and things that people experience that you can't predict those things. You can't, put things in place that's going to stop from experiencing a car crash or one of those particular scenarios. And so, it doesn't pick and choose. They think I heard the other day that I think around 70% of people in the U.S. have experienced some sort of trauma, So when you look at the wide range of folks who have experienced something in their lives, there's a smaller percentage where those symptoms and their ability to walk away from that event, they're not able to do it,
right.
And so that's what keeps those symptoms kind of go on for months, and then that's when you're looking at PTSD.
So it can interrupt your day-to-day functions. Symptoms can get worse, but guess what? They can also get better with effective treatment. And talking about treatment, we have great guests on the program today. Colin Farley, a licensed independent social worker with the Des Moines Vet Center, will be joining us. Ollie Cooperwood, or Cooperwood as I call him, basically, because that's the way you say his name, Cooperwood. He's both a coach and a strategist. I've interviewed him before. He's also a vet with PTSD issues. And Jim Wilwerding from New Heights Counseling Resources. He starts the program off. Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great today. How's everybody there?
Good. Are we doing a good job of describing PTSD and understand we could drop off the P if we wanted to? I mean, that's obvious, right? That's always post, but it is traumatic stress disorder.
Yes, and I like the way Nick described it. It is an after effect of experiencing something that is, threatening, horrifying, terrifying, something that kind of just, and it could be psychological, physical. I mean, it could be any of those areas where we feel that or perceive that threat to our well-being.
So for Nick, for example, it was the first time we opened the microphone up on this very program. Weeks and weeks ago, he could still be suffering from that trauma.
You might be surprised at the number of people that have that kind of trauma. I mean, that they've had some kind of experience where they've, felt exposed or, I'm not saying that's Nick, but I'm just saying, there's lots of folks who that's, it oftentimes people do associate it with, things like combat or assault or, accidents. But I think a lot of folks that I see really experience it also in terms of just those kind of threatening emotional experiences. Maybe it's kind of that shaming experience of childhood or being around violence, witnessing or overhearing those kind of things in the home or out in public or day-to-day stuff. So I think that's the big misnomer is everybody thinks PTSD is associated with combat, and it is. That's where we find it primarily, or, it's kind of most predominantly. But it really is, any trauma that the person perceives to be that threat.
Mm.
Jim, tell us a little bit about how trauma would impact, addiction or addiction treatment. I know, coming from St. Gregory's, it's something that we kind of deal with on a daily basis, but give me a little bit of your take on that.
It's interesting that trauma and addiction really have this very strong correlation. And we have to talk correlation because we can't really talk like trauma causes addiction or addiction causes trauma, but we see it kind of going both ways because we know that folks who have experienced trauma oftentimes will turn to substances or behaviors that soothe them or somehow kind of get them to occupy their mind from those intrusive thoughts or, kind of numb them out to the pain of the trauma. And so we see it on that side where fairly significant number of folks. I mean, I've read some statistics that somewhere in the 70s or 50 to 70% of folks who have traumatic stress disorder or have traumatic stress in their history turn to substances as kind of a coping mechanism, really unhealthy as it is. And then on the other side, when we look at most folks in their addictive cycle tend to, especially if they're using maybe street drugs as opposed to alcohol, tend to find themselves in situations where trauma is likely. They're in a situation where there is physical danger. They're, in illegal situations, so therefore the violence is more likely to happen to them, or having to do things to kind of just procure their substances.
Now, your professorial background includes what? Pastoral ministry with kids. Adolescents. What about substance abuse counseling through, say, ASAC in Cedar Rapids? Is that something you're still plugged into?
I am still. I'm still plugged into addictions treatment. Right now in private practice at New Heights, but yeah, I started out at ASAC, the Area Substance Abuse Counseling in Cedar Rapids, about 20 years ago or so. And then background in working with young people as a youth camp director and a youth minister. And just kind of grown my counseling career through working with addictions of all sorts. Still work a lot with addiction folks who are in the, obviously I'm in an office, so in the outpatient setting or in the office-based setting. Folks stepping down from treatment centers like Nick's.
Yeah, I can dig that. And by the way, everybody's going through a bit of trauma right now of some kind because of the pandemic. And it's a challenging time for most. You're listening to Talk Therapy, the mental health show, brought to you by our friends at St. Gregory Recovery Centers. Look for them online. Perhaps they can provide a great foundation and a road back, as it were, to home. And home is a life where you don't regret getting up you look forward to getting up and facing each day, not as a challenge, but just as a opportunity to make a difference. Jim Wilwerding, our guest from New Heights Counseling Resources, makes a difference each and every day in the lives of those he talks to and those that he ministers to. And I call it a ministry because anytime you're dealing with the inner psyche of an individual, you're talking about either spirituality or the lack of spirituality, in my estimation. Okay, there are a ton of different types of mental illness, and post-stress disorder, our topic of the day for this particular program, is sometimes overt. In other words, it's evidence. That's one of the reasons why veterans who return that are suffering from traumatic stress disorder are so evident, because there are so many of them in that subgroup that is being a veteran. But when you look at what they are exhibiting, sometimes it's very evident. Am I correct on that, Jim?
Yes, I agree that it is, like you said, overt. I mean, this is the subgroup that it really has people can see it. They recognize where the roots of it are. I mean, we know who the folks are who are coming back from combat or who are in that and are able to kind of recognize like, we can see their PTSD on a lot of times. I don't want to say everybody walking around with PTSD from battle is is evident because I think some folks wear their scars pretty well. But
right. Well, and I want to point out that with time remaining, Jim will be returning to this program for longer segments. Today, we wanted to get at least 3 different opinions and different opportunities for you folks out there, because let's face it, we're not trying to be all things to all people, but when it comes to a topic, we want to make sure that what we cover has a greater sense or a greater opportunity to talk to each and every one of you. Perhaps whether you suffer or not, maybe you come across somebody or have come across somebody that is suffering. So, Jim, tell us how our listeners can be in touch with you and New Heights Counseling Resources.
Well, we are in the metro area in Urbandale. I say where Urbandale, Windsor Heights, and Des Moines intersect, and just by the Buccaneers Arena. You can find us online at newheightscounseling.org. Or by the old-fashioned way of giving us a call at 515-274-9690. 274-9690?
Correct. Okay. And I'm not sure if Joshua has caught up with me or not. It's been kind of a week of running, but you will be listed under our resources tab on our website at talktherapytmhs.com. That's talktherapytmhs.com. Jim, good chatting with you. Way to start off the show. We appreciate your time and your professional areas of interest that include so much: mental health counseling for adults, adolescents, family therapy, group counseling in the areas of depression, anxiety, addictions, codependency, and spirituality. And by the way, codependency, much more prevalent today because now we're identifying it as such. I know what a codependent looks like, right? But how do you deal with it? Because you're drawn on 2 different sides. You know what, a shoe has 2 strings, right? And then it goes through the holes all the way down to the very beginning where the shoelace is actually tied, okay? And I know that it sounds like I'm simplifying it, but for me, that's exactly what codependency is. Two folks that start at one end of the shoe, go through all the holes of life, and end up being 2 totally separate parts of the shoelace. How about that?
There you go.
I like it.
I like it. I might have to borrow it.
I want to see that on a T-shirt.
T-shirt. I was just going to say.
Oh man, talk about that. All right, Jim. Thank you so much. New Heights Counseling Resources starts the show off and starts off this edition of Talk Therapy, the Mental Health Show, brought to you by St. Gregory's from the 5 Talents Wealth Management Studios. You're listening to Casper and Learhoff. Stay tuned. You're listening to Hope 940. We'll be back after this.
Stay tuned. There's more with Nick Learhoff and Scott Casper right here on Iowa's 940 for St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the Mental Health Show. Iowa, we're listening.
I came to St. Gregory very reluctantly at my all-time worst, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But I gave my best effort to these new things in my life as I saw hope in this complete approach. I'm at the point now that I feel my strongest and best ever, physically, mentally, and emotionally. I felt quite certain God was orchestrating everything.
St. Gregory Recovery Center. Recovery starts here. RelevantRadio.com/St. Gregory.
All right, welcome back to the 5 Talents Wealth Management Studios. It is Talk Therapy, the Mental Health Show, brought to you by St. Gregory Recovery Centers. All right, next week on the program, we have
Dr. Jacob Meyer from Iowa State's Exercise and Wellbeing Lab.
There's something that a lot of folks are doing these days during the pandemic. You're saying, and I witnessed it this morning, the various streets I crossed, I was waiting for a lot of runners, much more today than there was, say, 6 months ago. And did you ever think we'd be into a pandemic, 6 months in? 5 months, 6 months, it's an amazing time. But Dr. Jacob Meyer is going to be talking about exercise and physiology. The idea of what that does to the psyche, the psychology is amazing, and it can be so healthy. We'll have Jacob Meyer next week on this very show. All right, we're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. Our next guest, by the way, thanks to Jim Wilwerding from New Heights Counseling Resources. But our next guest, Ollie Cooperwood, has been somebody I've interviewed before in sports on my sports programming. And he is a communication engagement strategist. You'll find him at teambstrategy.com. Again, that's Ollie at teambstrategy.com. Ollie, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Scott. How you doing?
Good. You and I are a lot alike, detail-oriented, results-driven. This is the machine we call life, right?
That's correct.
Talk to us a little bit about your background. Where did you and I first meet?
We met at Lock Haven University. I was a college wrestler there, and Rocky Bonoma was the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were doing a special on just the universities, and he had me as one of the interviewees, I guess.
Right. And you and I,
so,
or at least you've been following me on LinkedIn, right? You've been stalking me there.
I passively watch LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, that has many different opportunities there, not just for jobs, but you have experts there, and you have people who are, sharing helpful information. Social media is supposed to be a help. So,
and I find LinkedIn is probably more so than any other platform, is helpful. And that's one of the reasons why when I go there, I'm very open, honest, and when I put a post out looking for guests for this topic, that's exactly what I get. I get friends reaching out and they offer up their expertise, and your expertise has continued to grow. Talk about what you're doing now.
So I am a consultant. Before this consulting job with Team B, I was working for the Department of the Navy. I was working as a public affairs officer. So they gave me the task of starting a program, a communication shop from the ground up. I was working with small businesses to figure out how to sell the government and the defense industry. And figuring out, hey, what can we do for you, and how can you provide services for the government that helps save the warfighter, helps them do their job, helps support them, if you will.
Post-traumatic. Go ahead.
And then I got into this job because one of our social economic categories is women-owned small businesses. That's who we were reaching out to.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner of Team B is a woman that had a small business, and her husband actually is a veteran. And so she started the business for military spouses at first because it was hard for them to find jobs being so transient. And so I said, this is a good cause. I would like working for this company. They support the government. We support the Department of Energy and the Nuclear Securities Administration. So we support both of those. And it's a good cause, and so that's the next development in my career.
Do you miss Lock Haven?
I do like the mountains. I do like Pennsylvania, actually. I'm living here in D.C., so it's just a little bit different change of pace there.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in D.C. right now as we are, 40 days away from the election or thereabouts. That's a crazy time. A whole lot of traumatic stress going on in D.C.
There's some trauma there.
Absolutely.
You could open up a practice, and I would believe that within 24 hours, you're probably sold out on segments, right? I mean, you've got a full client list within 24 hours.
Absolutely.
Sensitivity to the issue of traumatic stress disorder. Nick, this is another opportunity and another avenue for us to discuss our topic today. I love it.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful. I mean, when you talk about PTSD and just how it affects, all the way down to the core of the behaviors, the thoughts, I mean, just even what it can do for or I guess against a person's self-worth, self-efficacy, their own hope for the future, being able to really dial into how we can help those folks and what it means to really get that person help. So
you're secretly an optimist, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Ollie, how about you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Right. And I think that's part of the battle for most Americans, for most people. But as a former U.S. Marine, initially was there, I mean, the Marine Corps, kind of tears you down to build you up, right? I mean, that's the beginning. So you've got to see the bright light at the end of the tunnel, as it were. But talk to us a bit about transitioning from an active member of the U.S. Marines to everyday life. What kind of trauma did you experience, and how did it exhibit itself?
Well, so, I like to say the Marine Corps, it didn't necessarily cause trauma, but it exasperated an issue. I would like to say a character flaw I had. And so the trauma exasperated things like self-worth, feeling isolated, lonely. My my situation in the Marine Corps was I got hurt in a training accident. And after that injury, without going into a long detail, but after that injury, I started to feel useless to the Marine Corps, even to the point where I had to fight to stay in the Marine Corps because I was going to get medically discharged.
Wow.
And it was a fight I had to fight with lawyer. I mean, it was, going to the patient advocate. It was really hard to stay in the Marine Corps after those injuries. And so for me, I already had a hero syndrome. I want to save everybody. I want to help everybody. But what happens when the hero can't fight?
Mm-hmm.
The hero can't save because I'm injured now, and other people have to go in my place. And so, having that call to serve, and when you can't, it does something to you. And so, and I'll just be honest with you, I've been trying to replace that ever since I got out of the Marine Corps. That call to serve. I busy myself with things to get that self-worth, to feel that I'm contributing in some way. Some people would say, oh, you went to the Marine Corps and you served your country. I did. But, it's something in me, that's why I said the Marine Corps didn't cause a problem. It just exasperated something that was there. And the trauma that happened there only revealed, hey, this is the issue that you have to deal with.
Our guest, Ollie Cooperwood, he is a United States Marine, retired now, and often described, and I'm going to read this from something somebody else wrote about you, stoic. That's how they see you. You have an inner optimistic outlook on life. I know that most Marines have a search in a seek, not destroy, but they're searching out opportunities for adrenaline, right? I mean, this is what keeps the spirits high. But, man, that high is so high. And then the low, that absence of the adrenaline can be so tragic, really, for everybody that suffers. I do. I mean, if I'm not on the air, believe me, I'm questioning why I'm not on the air. Danny Bishop, our producer's not. He's probably endorsing the idea of me not being on the
air. Scott, you're doing a great job, man.
Oh, thank you so much. That's why Danny's here. Ollie, I appreciate you joining us. There is, we have a different way of looking at mental illness, okay? That if we talk about it and we are not afraid to have a laugh, not at somebody's expense, but just as a course of discussion. Because if we fail to see the humor in every aspect of life, we're kind of missing the point. Our body, our mind, our emotions, our spirituality, everything is governed by that which we put in. It's up to us, that which we give out, right? That it's input, output. And we want to make sure that everybody understands that it's okay to have a problem, but it's even better if you have that problem and it's identified, post-traumatic stress disorder, but then you seek out those that are perhaps experiencing what you're experiencing, but how to deal with it. How do you deal with it, Ollie?
Well, the funny thing, I didn't really go to seek help, Scott, until, and I like to say people have to be honest about, three things: what is, what was, and what will be. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really willing to seek out the help until I was real honest about what my life really was. What was happening? What were the ways I was, trying to get adrenaline? What were the practices I was doing? And then once I was honest about what it is, now I need to figure out what happened. I need to be able to cope with what was. And then now you have an optimism about what will be. But until you are honest about what is, and I don't want to say get over, you can never get over what was, but you work through it. What was, and then what will be. So I just have to go. I need to find purpose. I need to find what is going to drive me. What code I live by. Just start putting my life in order. And so when I did that, you find activities. Wrestling has always been a mainstay for me.
Me
be
too.
Able to teach wrestling. Being able to teach wrestling, be able to talk to people, to be able to have a platform.
Right.
Has always been a mainstay. So those are the type of things. I have a couple projects I'm working on.
Oh, don't tip the hand yet. We got to take a commercial break. We're going to hold you through the break. Then we're going to tell our listeners, give you the opportunity to tell our listeners about your current projects, what you're working on, and the joy that you find from giving back. Stay tuned. There's more. It's Talk Therapy, the Mental Health Show, brought to you by St. Gregory's Recovery Center. Look for them online. Nick, what is the website online for St. Gregory?
stgregoryctr.com.
CTR, that stands for center.
Yep.
Yeah, how about that?
How about that?
Creative folks out there. What we need is the king of emojis, Ollie Cooperwood, to chime in with some emoji help for you, sir. You can use it, believe me. He is the king of emojis. Stay tuned. More on Hope 940 after the short timeout.
St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the Mental Health Show, will continue after this commercial timeout.
I can't say enough about the staff at St. Gregory's, who seem especially gifted to work in this field. They were so helpful and encouraging and will always have my gratitude. I made some very good new friends, a couple of whom I probably would not have made it through those beginning days without. Everyone and the programs at St. Gregory's seem designed and placed in my life by God's perfect plan.
RelevantRadio.com/St. Gregory. RelevantRadio.com/St. Gregory.
All right, welcome back to the show. It is St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the Mental Health Show. Find us online at talktherapy.tmhs.com as we head into the second half of the hour. Our guest, Ollie Cooperwood, he's making his home now in Virginia and working in Virginia. We talked a little bit about how he dials in each and every day about giving back. He's a former member of the United States Marine Corps, which is a wonderful family. Talk about a brotherhood. But generally speaking, those that are injured in their service to our country often find themselves in the same place Ollie found himself, and that is, how do I continue to give back even though I'm injured? I don't feel as useful as I did. As a matter of fact, perhaps I feel useless. Well, we're here to talk about it. Ollie, good morning and welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to us a bit about how you've dealt with that. Giving back is a huge part of what you, the king of emojis, does to deal with your own personal, and I call it issues, but it's called life. In general, how do you deal with it?
So, it's difficult at times because your brain, your mind, can, my mind runs almost 1,000 miles a minute, meaning I'm always trying to do something. And I keep myself busy that way. But, my grandpa used to have a saying. He said, run, run, run. You better run. Mm-hmm. While you still can, while there's still time, while you still have the energy. But while you're running, pay attention to the signs. Wow. And I thought that was always something that was very, very impactful. So I always try to pay attention to the signs and opportunities. Much like how we connected, Scott. I talked to you probably 15 years ago. Right. I was just looking at that. Time flies.
I was younger, better looking.
I said the same thing. If you looked at my LinkedIn picture, I changed it recently because, I was so depressed at the look from the hair down.
That's a whole different kind of trauma.
Right. But I stay lighthearted.
Yeah. And Nova Wrestling Club, you and I were talking off air about George Mason and Joe Russell and our family of wrestlers and coaches there at George Mason. But in Fairfax, there is also Nova Wrestling Club. How did you become involved with Nova?
I had just got down to the D.C. area, and I was at a baseball game, and it was a chance meeting. I was sitting on the side. I think I was maybe working a booth as a vendor, part-time, and a guy came by and said, "Where'd you get those ears?" And I said, "Well, a lot of battles." He said, "Well, I've got this small club in Virginia." And I told him my credentials. I told him, "Hey, I wrestled at Lock Haven, and I used to coach at a place called Shippensburg University. I was a wrestling coach there for a number of years." And he said, "I just got a club, and if you could come in and do a few clinics for us." And I said, "Oh, okay, no problem. I can do a few clinics." Well, those clinics started, 3 days a week, and teaching 35 kids a night. So it kind of, organically kind of came about. A chance meeting gave me a platform to relay some of my wrestling experience to some younger folks.
That's organic growth in its finest. Ollie Cooperwood, our guest. You left Shippensburg in about 2015, but the desire and the need to continue to serve. In this case, you mentioned 35 kids on the average per session. I think that's in and of itself admirable, because I have a hard time dealing with 1 or 2 kids. Of course, I'm old and bitter. 62 now, and I can handle little kids. I just had my first grandchild, and every picture, every chance I get, I look at that little boy and I'm thinking, oh my.
Special.
Yeah. I wish I'd had him like 20 years ago when I had the energy to, but he's a cute little fella. His name's Kai. Our guest, Ollie, is available online. Look for him on LinkedIn. Ollie, give them some resources where they can reach out to you and become friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.
Yep. So on LinkedIn, is if you just type in Ollie Cooperwood, you won't find 3 people with that name.
No.
I promise you. Maybe one. So on LinkedIn, you can find me. I'm on. I use Twitter quite a bit. On Ollie Coop, so OLIECOOP. Those are the 2 main platforms I use, and kind of put out my thoughts, some of my upcoming projects I'm working on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about LinkedIn. It sounds like I'm a proponent for LinkedIn, and maybe I am, but LinkedIn allows individuals to kind of air out what they're doing and express it to others, and then others aren't. They don't feel challenged by offering up their opinion. They chime in. It's not a political discourse. Politics may be playing a part in that discussion, but that's not what it's intended to. It's intended to help each other. And Ollie reached out to me when he saw my post, and by golly, it's been terrific to catch up. Ollie, I mentioned to you, or I asked you at the time where Ollie comes from. That's our final question. Where does the name Ollie come from?
Ollie's an English name. It's Oliver. Ollie's a derivative of it, and it means peace.
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 And with that, we end our segment with Ollie Cooperwood. He is peace personified. Ollie, thanks for taking the time today with us. I appreciate it more than you'll know. I do want to offer up an opportunity, though, for our listeners out there, no matter where you are, reach out to resources and start cataloging your resources, our resources. Start with ours. Our drop-down tab on our website is constantly growing, and that's by design. What we want to do is be a resource for each and every one of you, so you can have that discussion first with yourself, and then seek out professionals, people that deal with it every single day, whether it's through a wrestling club in Fairfax, Virginia called Nova, or perhaps it's a group of individuals that gather because they've experienced the exact same thing you're experiencing. And Ollie, that's a good jumping on point, but there's so much more that can be taken away from a small group setting or even a large group setting where you have some similarities with others that are in the group, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wrestling team, I focus on wrestling because it is my sport, but a wrestling team is a collective of individuals all seeking the very same goal. And it's an individual sport with a team aspect. But here's the problem. You got so many driven individuals in a wrestling room, egos sometimes have to be checked at the door, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We do that too. We do a lot of that talking and letting people know that, this is a brotherhood or sisterhood with wrestling, and we're all here together trying to seek a common goal. And
it's a safe place, a wrestling room. It should be a safe place, even though it's violent by its tendency. But when you think about it, it's unlike, Nick, you work at St. Gregory's. It's not like small group at St. Gregory where... No,
not even a little bit. No, I mean, we do have like kickboxing bags and things, but I don't think we'd even get to a place where we'd be like, all right, guys, let's just settle our differences. Let's just throw it down. Here we go.
Right,
nothing like that. So
it's kind of cool that you have I've never seen anybody use them.
Yeah. No, we got the one hanging up in the gym, and we got the kickboxing bag downstairs. And
you guys have a full gym in Bayard. Ollie, you should move to Bayard, Iowa. They'll give you your own gym. You can be the director of it. And there's volleyball. There's weights, weight room. The second floor, there's a wonderful weight room and equipment room.
Cardio room. Yeah. Big old cable crossover machine and everything. And I mean, it really comes back to finding those healthy activities. When you talk about the what was and struggling through some of that and just trying to figure out how to gain passion and purpose. A lot of times the people that come into St. Gregory's, they haven't been necessarily healthy from their consumption standpoint, obviously, but then also their nutrition and just their daily habits. I mean, everything that they've been doing is getting the substance, using the substance, struggling after using the substance, and then finding it again. And so physical activity and things that help bring, light, to help bring positivity, that help bring, release those natural endorphins that are the feel goods,
spark
that are supposed to be there, oftentimes get missed. And so a big part of the program is just getting people active again.
When I was touring, you'll get a kick out of this. When I was touring St. Gregory's in Barrett, Iowa, this particular location, I saw the weight stacks and I said, let's just stop for a minute. Why don't we throw a couple 45s on that bar? And my memory is much stronger than my actual today ability to lift two 45-pound plates plus the bar. So I was immediately put into check. And you mentioned your ears. Folks out there may not know this, but wrestlers, mixed martial artists, will identify each other by that particular brand, and that is the cauliflower ear. That is the cartilage of the ear that has been traumatized, as it were, and it calcifies. And a great cauliflower ear is often seen as a badge of honor. Ollie, there are those out there that will work into the point where their insurance will cover it, and then they have surgery to repair their cauliflower ear. Why have you not repaired it?
See, mine's not as gnarled. I can hear out of it. Sometimes people, their ears are already covered over, like earmuffs. They can't hear out of it, so you need it then. But mine's a nice little scar. It's not too bad.
Well, and here's the difference. You're a good-looking guy. You were the picture, if you will, a poster child for the U.S. Marine Corps. You look good in the uniform, and the uniform, man. I tell you what, that if you're a Marine, that's one of the things you remember till the day you die. The moment you first put on the dress blues, right?
Right.
Yeah. And did you have to have them tailored, or do they come pretty well close to fit?
No, you know that. I got to get them tailored again if I wasn't getting to them now. But back when I first joined, I had 31-inch waist, broad shoulders. So I was a nightmare there. Huge legs, small waist.
Ollie, we appreciate you jumping on with us. The show, Talk Therapy, of course, and our topic today is post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going to take another look at it with our next guest. He's coming up, waiting in the wings. That's Colin Farley. No relation to Chris Farley, by the way. But we will talk to Colin Farley coming up next. We'll send Ollie to the showers. Ollie, thank you. Best to everybody there in Fairfax at Nova, all the kids and the other coaches as well. Appreciate you and your expertise. Look for him online, folks. Ollie, give him one more time a way to reach you online.
You can go on LinkedIn at Ollie Cooperwood, and you can also go on Twitter at Ollie Coop.
Ollie Coop. We appreciate that. Folks, stay tuned. There's more. You're listening to St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show, only on Hope 940.
Stay tuned. There's more with Nick Learhoff and Scott Casper right here on Iowa's 940 for St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Iowa, we're listening.
My dad went to AA once, decided it wasn't for him, and refused to ever go back. He was stubborn and confident that he was just okay. But he wasn't okay, and our family was suffering. So we had an intervention for him, and he agreed to go to St. Gregory Recovery Center. There, he learned how to deal with his addiction the way he needed. Insurance covered our costs, and he has been sober now for over 4 years. Learn more at relevantradio.com/recovery.
Welcome back. This is Nick and Scott Casper with St. Gregory Recovery Center's Mental Health Talk Show. We're here with Colin Farley, a licensed independent social worker from the Des Moines Vet Center, to talk about PTSD.
All right, welcome back. And Nick, I appreciate your expertise. You talk to so many different folks, and I don't think you've had a chance to meet our next guest, but he's a licensed social worker with the Des Moines Vet Center. He joins us now. Colin, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking the time. Our topic today on this week's episode is traumatic stress disorder, in this case, post-traumatic stress disorder. But because it's identified as post, that doesn't necessarily mean it's over, right? I mean, it's something that happened. You're really just now addressing what PTSDs are, their effects, so cause and effect, and then even more, how do you deal with the effects of traumatic stress disorder? Am I correct?
Yes. No, I think you're spot on with that assessment. With PTSD, the event is just the beginning, and then oftentimes what causes most people the most distress is the remembrance of it, the playing back of it in their mind, and then any kind of triggers that may be sights, sounds, smells, or going to certain places that remind them of where the event took place.
I think that's one of the reasons alcoholics, for them, the trauma is daily drinking, right?
Right.
And the tendency to continue that behavior is a learned behavior. You didn't grow up drinking alcohol. Most people detested it as a kid. At some point, the side effect of drinking became more important than the taste or the abhorrent taste of alcohol and a beer, whatever. But our guest Colin Farley. No, and I said this before going to break. No relation to Chris Farley, right?
No. Over the years, I've been asked that, but no, unfortunately not, because I would have loved to have had such a funny family member. So
funny, but I just watched an episode. I can't remember the name of the show, but The Sad Life that was Chris Farley.
Right.
Every comedian I've ever known, and I've known a lot of them. My old roommate Tom Arnold, Roseanne. The names go on and on. Generally speaking, very introspective people. Okay, people that have for some reason turned to, and a friend of mine through St. Gregory, by the way, also a comedian. I'm not going to name names, but they are generally introverted people that have had some trauma in their life, and they exhibit, or at least try to resolve, their complications with traumatic stress disorder by or through comedy. But generally speaking, they're very introverted, sometimes even sad. And I thought, initially it would be fun to hang out with comedians. Well, guess what? Not so.
May not be the case.
Not so. Anyway, kind of a left turn there, Colin. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's fine.
Your undergraduate degree came from the University of Iowa, and your graduate degree came from the University of Texas. What happened?
Well, so I grew up here in Des Moines, and my sister is very world and kind of more of an introvert, and she was encouraging me to kind of get out and expand my horizons. So she had moved to Austin a couple of years before that, and so I joined her for graduate school. So.
Big difference between UT and the University of Iowa, right?
You got it, yeah.
One of them is a proud school with football, and that's University of Iowa. Great wrestling program. University of Texas, not so much. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I'm a huge Hawkeye fan. Anyway, you started your career in D.C. as a case manager with people that suffer from serious mental illness. Talk about how PTSDs or traumatic stress disorder came up inside your study and then your practice.
Right. So my father was a physician assistant here at the Des Moines VA for nearly 30 years. So wow. I kind of ostensibly grew up at the hospital there. And so that's kind of where I gained my passion for working with veterans, and my passion for working with people with mental illness comes from my own experiences with depression and anxiety over the years. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of merges those two interests quite a bit.
I think it's important, Nick, for everybody to understand that life is a series of events, okay? There's always beginnings to each issue or different aspects of life, and there's sometimes endings, right?
Right, exactly.
And Colin, life is a work in progress. It's never perfect, and if that's what we seek, we're kind of selling it short, right?
Right, completely. I have this discussion at least once or twice a week with veterans about how, especially when they're down on themselves for not doing or doing something, reminding them that we're all work in progress until the end of our days. So,
Which for me, maybe this afternoon at 4:00. I don't know, but so and I joke, but at the same time, I want to live every single moment to the best of my ability and to the most enjoyment. In other words, I want to give the best to my family, my friends, those I serve through this radio program and other shows. To Danny, I want to give him the best. I mean, if he's just standing in here putting in his time, that's not fair to him. Then it just becomes a job. Life should be moments of brilliance and other moments to appreciate what you've gone through, and then to anticipate that which is yet to come. And sometimes it can be absolutely phenomenal.
Got to live for today.
Yeah.
You bet.
Danny, you're that kind of a guy, young, carefree, energetic, out there riding your bike, skateboarding with the kids. I mean, you're just one of those guys. I've always admired you because you always seem to have a positive outlook on life.
Scott, if you see me running, you better run.
Well, I was going to talk to you about that. 2013 to 17, you were assisting homeless veterans, Colin. Talk to us about that, because that can be a huge challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my first position with the VA hospital was kind of an outreach worker. I was going to shelters, to different shelters, as well as to different homeless camps. Pretty much working on assuring safety for all of them, and then assessing their need or desire to find housing. And so the VA, I don't know if this still holds true. I think it does, is that they have a contract through the Central Iowa Shelter down on Mulberry Street, in which they have some contracted beds. So that's some temporary housing while veterans who are in the shelter can go get into a treatment program, or the VA also offers a permanent housing option. That's called HUD-VASH. It's kind of like Section 8 for veterans. And so that's administered through the hospital.
And it's called HUD, say it again? BASH, like
HUD-VASH.
B-A-S-H?
B-A-S-H.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the acronym.
Yeah.
Our guest, Colin Farley. Colin, you said you grew up in a family where veterans, who I revere, by the way. My father is a veteran in the Korean War. The Army Security Agency, that which most people didn't even know existed.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, the ASA. He was one of the founding members of that. And I say founding, I mean he was one of the very first enlisted to have any kind of impact on what the federal government at the time was needing, and that was information. And Dad reveres his time. He remembers it well, and most of his fellows have gone on to, in other words, they've passed, but, Dad is left with his memories. And sometimes that can be very traumatic, and it's one of the reasons why we do this very program. Dealing with veterans and having the opportunity to help them has got to be both challenging and rewarding. What can you tell us about those that are suffering from traumatic stress disorder that you are seeing since reaching, your employment with Des Moines Vet Center?
Right. Well, here at the Vet Center, we are still seeing, mostly Vietnam-era veterans, or some from the Gulf War. So that's kind of an older generation. But more and more, we're seeing the younger generation from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan come to us, which is, I look at that as a positive. It's not to say that they don't have just as severe issues with PTSD, but the more that we see walk through our doors, the more we feel like we are helping, because, as you probably know, the suicide rate amongst veterans still sits at about 20 a day.
Wow.
And so, I just feel fortunate myself when I see new veterans come in that, hopefully this is at least one life that we're reaching and that we're saving. So.
Look for the resources tab. You'll find the Vet Center, Des Moines Vet Center in this case, under our tab section as soon as Joshua gets that put up. And our guest, Colin Farley, and his fellows there You're one of about 6 social work therapists?
Right. Yeah. So we have. I'm one of 6 social work therapists here at the office, and then we also have an outreach specialist. Part of the vet center's mission is to go out into the community and raise awareness of our services. So, pre-pandemic, we were quite out there and in the community. We've had to cut back because a lot of events have been canceled or postponed, but we really take pride in being out there. Not only will our outreach specialists go, but us as clinicians will go to events as well.
Colin, I appreciate you joining us today on the program. About a minute remains. Give them a website they can find you at.
So it's www.vetcenter.va.gov.
Done. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it, Colin. We'll make sure that's up on our resources tab on our website at talktherapytmhs.com, talktherapytmhs.com. Well, it's gone by way too quickly, the hour anyway, and that is our topic this week, our topic du jour, and that is traumatic stress disorder. Hopefully for many of you it's post, but many of you are still going through the cause and effect and discovering how best to work with it and to change your life in such a way where it's not as traumatic. And we're not. Remember, we're all suffering through life alone. It's how we deal with it. And Nick, that's a big part of it, right? How we deal with it.
Absolutely. It's all about the focus. It's about, it's not a matter of if, but when there's a struggle within life and how we kind of overcome, and are we moving forward and reaching out for help, or are we just sitting and stewing in it? So we want to make sure that we're moving forward, reaching out, getting help, utilize and lean on those folks around us.
All right, from the 5 Talents Wealth Management Studios here on Hope 940, you've been listening to St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show with Scott Casper and Nick Learhoff. We'll invite you to tune in next week where our guest is
Dr. Jacob Myers.
Stay tuned. We'll be back next week for Talk Therapy.